Good afternoon, everybody. So today we start with our Upanishads. Hope you're excited. I'm excited. And why don't we just kick off? I'll bring it up on the screen. So I say 140, 145, 205 we end. Okay, I'm still getting with me. So let's bring up our hadāraṇyaka Upanishad. Here we are. And Laura tells me that some of you are confused about the numbering. Well, some of the Upanishads have 3 numbers. So we obviously that's not what they're going to, that's not the way they name the 3 sections. But let's, for our purposes, say the first number is the chapter, the second is the section, and the third is the verse. Brihad has 3 numbers. The hadāraṇyaka, we just call it Brihad in the field. Everybody knows Brihad, like Gita. We don't say the Bhagavad Gita. We say Gita. Same with the Bhagavata. Anyway, so that has 3 numbers, but the Chandogya has 2. So then the Chandogya, we can just think of it as chapter and verse number. Okay, how does it work? Well, you know, it's kind of simple. You just read everything. You just have to read everything that's in the attachment. But you will find that here we have chapter 1. Okay, first is a little preamble, tells you something about the Upanishad. Then you have the content of the Upanishad, and then there we are. And then we have, 1.47 up the top here. So that would be the first chapter, if you will, the 4th section in the first chapter. I don't know how many there are. There might be 6 or whatever there are sections in chapter 1. Let me tell you right now, there's 5, and then the verse number. So therefore, here we are. Number 7, that's the verse number, because we're in 1.4. We're in chapter 1, section 4, and we're going to go down to the verse number. The verse numbers are next to the actual text itself. The section numbers are often big, placed before a section. We'll run into one in a minute. And this is verse 7. So let's kick off. All right, so remember, we're looking at God. Now, one of the terms we need to encounter immediately, we are encountering immediately, is Brahman. Absolute truth. In the Upanishads, so Brahman is the source of everything. Now, the Upanishads are not philosophy in a systematic, sort of analytic, sort of step-by-step developing an argument sort of way. They're not like that. They're more mystical utterances, sage poets, profoundly wise, but their minds are not necessarily structured, or they haven't necessarily trained their minds to sort of, as the later sutra authors are going to do. They're going to train their minds and adopt a very systematic way of engaging in exposition. But this is early times. Intelligence is just the way things are presented. The Upanishads are just utterances, beautiful, profoundly, but presented in a sort of lots of metaphors, some poetic utterances. It's not intended to be systematic philosophy. Why reading it? Because this is where Vedanta is grounded, and much later Indian thinking is grounded in these Upanishads. Okay, so we're in 147, and here we go. At that time, in the beginning, remember we read the Rig Veda about the beginning. After all, one of the big goals of philosophy in general, and lots of subject matter, there's a lot of subject matter in philosophy, ethics, metaphysics, and so forth, epistemology. Subject matter of philosophy in general is to speculate, using the effect of this world, and speculate what could be the cause. What is the cause of it all? Right? Science can't go there, because science can only begin post Big Bang. Nothing to say about the cause. What occurred pre Big Bang? That's a question for theologians and metaphysicians. So at that time, meaning at the beginning, this world, right? This is the effect, right? We can only start philosophy from what we see. We make inferences, as science is the same. We make inferences from what we perceive. From that, we make inferences. Okay, science can make certain kinds of inferences. Philosophy is going to make larger inferences. that are not going to be curtailed by necessarily by verification, in the same way that science is, right? Hypothesis and then experimentation, verification. But still, everybody starts off with the effect. You can only speculate. Perceiving the effect. After all, what is an effect but something that comes out of a cause? And what is a cause other than something that produces an effect? So you start off with the effect. So at that time, this world, the effect was without real distinctions. You get the sense that there was no, what later the Upanishads will call nama rupa, name and form, right? Name and form, right? This is a tree. It's a form of a tree. Like we give it a name, it's a tree. You could call it anything, right? In Sanskrit, it's vriksha. In Italian, it's arbero. So, but the form is the same. Languages give it a different name. So it was without any real distinction. So there were no trees and mountains and universes and planets and anything. No distinctions. It was distinguished simply. Here it is, in terms of name and visible appearance. There it is. The rupa. What I just said. The form, the visible appearance. The Sanskrit's rupa. And then he is so and so by name, and has this sort of an appearance. Okay, so this is a tree. What sort of an appearance does it have? Well, it has branches and roots. And we're gonna call it tree. Okay, so even today, this world is distinguished simply in terms of name and visible appearance. But even now, right? To have language, we have to point to things and say, well, that's a tree. There's an apple. Pick me an apple, and so forth. So as when we say he is so and so by name. The Upanishads like to use the term Devadatta. That's sort of like we might say Joe Bloggs or Fred Smith or something. Joe Doe, that's what it is in America. In England, it would be Fred Smith or Joe Bloggs. So he is so and so. He is Devadatta or Vishnu Datta, and has this sort of appearance. He's 6 foot and he has a beard, whatever. So that's. But in the beginning, it was without any of that. This world was without real distinction. So we have like a pre-creative, a sense of pointing to some kind of pre-creative existence. Now we move into the Atman. Now Brahman is the name. Okay, there's 2 terms, Brahman and Atman. The Upanishads use Brahman for the cosmic cause of everything, that from which everything springs and back and into which it reemerges, right? Even here at this time without real distinctions, and then distinctions emerge, creation takes place, forms emerge, shapes, right? Planets, universes, oceans, mountains, okay? And then of course in Hinduism, it goes back in, it devolves back into its cause, whatever that cause is. And of course, our part of our discourse is going to be about those traditions that identify that cause as God. But all of them do, of course, Buddhism and so forth, as we mentioned last class. Then the other term is Atman. Now that's usually Brahman is consciousness. It's intelligent. Whatever emerges out of it, whatever goes back into it, Brahman in its highest nature is pure. It's chit. It's consciousness. Then there's a spark of Brahman in all living creatures. That's what life is. Something is alive because it is to some extent conscious. Like consciousness may be covered in different ways, but consciousness is the same. It's not like there's different types of consciousness. There's only consciousness covered. So the consciousness of a human being is covered by the human body, the human mind, and clearly our consciousness is more active, it's more aware than the consciousness of a tree, which cannot even see or hear or smell, but it can feel. So the consciousness is different. Not the conscious. It's not that the consciousness is different. It's the covering that's different. But penetrate. So Atman is the term that's usually used for the spark of Brahman that's within every living creature. However, my friends, don't get confused. Sometimes in the Upanishads, the terms are flipped, and sometimes Brahman is used for your own little individual spark of consciousness, and Atman might be used for the cosmic one. So don't get confused. The terms are interchangeable. By later Vedanta, as Vedanta sets out to systematize, right? Vedanta Sutra we'll be reading after the Upanishads. Now we get sort of intellectual systematization applied to the non-systematic teachings of the Upanishads. By the Vedanta period, then usually, almost always, but I won't say always, but usually Atman is only referred to the individual and Brahman is the cosmic. But even there, you may see some interchange. So don't be confused. Look at the context. Is it speaking about the whole, like the first line here? Or is it talking like the next line, penetrating this body? Well, now you know it's localized in the body, up to the very nail tips, right? Consciousness pervades us right up to our nails. The nails themselves are not conscious, but fingertips are. He remains there like a razor within a case. Like if you put a razor in a case, you can't see the razor, but it's in the case. Or a termite within a termite hill. If you see a termite hill, it just looks like a mound of earth. You don't want to put your foot in it because all of a sudden it'll explode into life, right? You don't see the ants. That's the point. You don't see the ants, but they're in the termite hill. So consciousness is in the body, pervading it. People do not see him. Can't see consciousness. You know you're conscious. We can't visually see it. For he is incomplete as he comes to be called breath. If you say, well, I'm alive because of I'm breathing, that's incomplete. Okay, breath may be an external manifestation of consciousness, but consciousness is underpinning breath. Without consciousness, there's no breath. Or you could pump the lungs in a dead body and make breath come out of the mind, but there wouldn't be any consciousness, would there? So he's incomplete if you start saying, well, he's breath. And he's incomplete as he comes to be called breath when he's breathing, speech when he's speaking, same thing. We can talk because consciousness is animating the vocal cords and the mind and so forth. He's incomplete when sight when he's seeing, hearing when he's hearing, and mind when he's thinking. Upanishads like to be repetitive because remember, they're not written down. You have to hear them. So, you know, if you have to just memorize it once, you don't get to like a book. If you miss something, you can go back and check what was that again and check. Can't do that with oral exposition. Okay, so therefore it's repetitive. These are only the names of his various activities. Seeing, hearing, breathing, those are names of his activities, but what it is consciousness itself. A man who considers him to be any one of these, you think your ultimate truth is breath or is sight or is speech, does not understand him. Not understanding is something deeper than that, it's consciousness. He's incomplete within any one of these. He's there, supporting sight, supporting sound, supporting thinking, but something more than those activities which are external expressions of consciousness. One should consider them as simply his Atman. So there we have it. For in it, all these become one. So what underpins these different, what underpins sight? What's the common denominator of seeing and hearing and thinking? Well, they're all supported by consciousness. Without consciousness, there's no hearing, no thinking, no smelling. So therefore, they all come to rest in consciousness. In it, all these become one. They all become one in their activator, their support, and their ultimate essence. This same self is the trail to this entire world, like a trail, right? You follow a trail and you get to whatever it is. So you're seeking life. What's the life in an ant? What's the life in a blade of grass? You're going to end up in Indian thinking for the Atman. Okay, scientists are looking for the secret of life, but they think they're going to find it as a neuron. Ha! The yogis, the Vedantists, they keep looking, and there's no neuron. You never find it as a neuron. I mean, what is a neuron? It's a combination of atoms, subatomic entities. So what are you looking for then? You're not looking for a neuron. You're talking about subatomic entities that form the neuron. So which subatomic entity is life then? See, yeah, the Vedanta would say you never find some subatomic entity held together with other subatomic entities by forces like gravity and so forth, nuclear forces and so forth. You never find something in that material sphere to correspond to consciousness. Okay, so by following this trail, one comes to know this entire world. Once you realize one Atman, you realize everything alive is an Atman. Just as by following their tracks, one finds the cattle. So you see how the Upanishads, they're rustic, they're in the forest, they're, 8th century BCE, by scholarly dating. The Brihad is anyway. Whoever knows this finds fame and glory. And now we move on to verse 8. Here at the top, it says 1414, because the number at the top often corresponds to the last number on the page. So we go down to the bottom of the page. Oops. And no, that's not right. So why is it 1414? Don't know. Doesn't matter. That's odd. Why is it 1414 then? Is it? He must have cut that out. You know what? He cuts it. Yeah, he's cut that out. I cut it out because I didn't think it was relevant. So there would have been on this page there would have been 12, 13, and 14. Don't get confused. Just read whatever's on the. You don't have to worry. Just read everything that is in that's in the file for the hadāraṇyaka. I cut everything else out for you. Just so you know, so that's the chapter, that's the section at the top here, top right. Here's the Upanishad, right? Upanishads, they're all Upanishads, but with different names. Right now we're reading hadāraṇyaka. Next time we'll read Chandogya, and it will be Chandogya Upanishad. Then there's the chapter, section, and the verse. In the Chandogya, there'll just be 2 numbers. The last number is here inside the text. So 8. Let me get this out of the way. This innermost thing, this self, Atman, it's a consciousness, it's an entity, it's a thing, it's a substance. It is dearer than a son. It is dearer than wealth. Because it's the most dear thing. It's your very life itself. What is more dear than life? It is dearer than everything else. If a man claims, or a woman, that something other than the self is dear to him, if I say, well, I'm actually my money is more dear to me than myself, my house is, if someone were to say something like that, and if someone else were to tell him that he will lose what he holds dear, so I say, oh, my house is dear to me, my money, and someone will say to me, a wise man will say, well, you're going to lose that. Either you lose it in life, something will happen and you lose it, your fortunes will turn, or you lose it at death. Whatever, in some form or fashion, you'll lose it. So if someone were to tell him that he will lose what he holds dear, that's liable to happen. That's what's going to happen. We will lose everything other than our Atman, because Atman is eternal. You can never lose that. We die, and then in the teachings of reincarnation, we find first expressed in the hadāraṇyaka. And body dies, but the Atman in a subtle body, but let's not get into that yet. We're not ready for that now. The Atman goes into the next body, bringing its deeds, its karma with it. Then that karma determines the next body. We'll have plenty of time to talk about all that. Right now, we just want to get a sense of this Atman and Brahman and how they're presented in old ancient texts. But when a man regards only his Atman, self being Atman, as dear to him, which is the yogis, wise, they understand the most important thing is the Atman. They seek that. It doesn't mean they don't, it doesn't mean they're not compassionate. It doesn't mean they don't care about others, but they understand. The moment of death, you're alone. So really, it's yourself that you're born alone, you die alone. In the middle, we just flap about. And we think all of these things are ours, but they're not. And we realize that at the moment of death, it's gone, finished. So when a man regards only his self as dear to him, what he holds dear will never perish. Unlike houses and wealth and relationships, even children, right? You're all in college, some of you, I'm sure your parents are kind of a little bit, they miss you like anything, but they won't tell you because they don't want to bug you. But they've lost you. You're now students, and next thing you'll be on the job market. Maybe you'll go home for dinner once in a while. Okay. All right. So but if we hold the Atman as dear to us, what we hold dear will never perish. Great. And I'm going to keep an eye on the clock. Where was that clock? I know we've got plenty of time, but I'm still getting used to it. I can't find the clock. Oh, there it is. 18 minutes. Now the question is raised. Some people think they will become the whole by knowing Brahman. So by knowing Brahman, you become Brahman. In other words, if you realize, put it differently, if you realize your Atman, then you realize your Atman as part of this greater whole Brahman. So you realize everything. So this is a claim that will be made in Vedanta and yoga. So in a sense, by know thyself, as who was it, Plato or something said, wise men of all traditions. And in a sense, indirectly through yourself, you know everything, but into your connection of yourself with everything. So back we go to the beginning. Again, not systematic philosophy, just these kind of semi-mystical expressions. In the beginning, this world was only Brahman, and it knew only itself, thinking, I am Brahman. So before creation, there's Brahman, and intelligent thinking. So it's an intelligent, whatever Brahman is, it's an intelligent entity. As a result, it became the whole, because everything comes from it. So in that sense, everything is Brahman, even though Brahman may be distinct from everything. The fact that everything emerges from it indicates that Brahman is the whole. Among the gods, now the gods, remember, they came afterwards. Remember the Rig Veda verse? The celestial, small g, we spoke about it. Likewise, whoever realized this, only they became the whole. Only that not the gods are not necessarily enlightened. They're not necessarily wise. In fact, some of them really get up to a lot of mischief. Like Indra, got a raid. He's always getting in trouble. He's a bit of a cowboy. Well, I don't know if cowboy is a good word, but he's a bit of a, he has an eye for other people's wives. How about that for a start? So he, has some, should we say, dubious moral behaviors associated with him. So that they're not necessarily enlightened being. Among the gods, small g, remember? When we talk about Ishvara, the God that we're interested in this course, the one supreme intelligent cause of everything, big G. Likewise, whoever realized this, only they became the whole, right? And then we, up to this point, and then we have, it was the same also among the seers, the rishis, those that saw truth, and among humans. So there's the celestials, then there's the great seers. They have their own realm where they abide. Seers mean they see the truth, not see like just physical objects. They perceive deeper than that. We see the effects. We see qualities. We see green shape, okay, tree shape, green color. That's all we see. But the seers, the rishis in Sanskrit, they see the reality. Where do these qualities come from? Where do the where do these qualities, what do they reside in? What is that which animates them? So they see in a deeper level. So that's a seer, it's called a rishi. Upon seeing this very point, this is very esoteric. The seer Vamade proclaimed, I am Manu, I was the sun, meaning you in a sense, you identify yourself with everything because you're a part of the Brahman, which is everything. So don't worry too much about that. So he's just picking on two things. I was Manu, a great ancient lawgiver, because the Atman is the same. So in that way, you could say, I am you, you are me, Tattvamasi. We are that. In our deepest level, we are identical. Now, are we individuals in our deepest level, or like drops of ocean that merge into Brahman at the end when we become enlightened? There are differences on that, my friends. And that divides the Vedanta school. But let's not get into those details now. Let's just get a sense of Brahman. So when a man venerates another deity thinking he is one and I am another, he doesn't understand. We're all the same. Oh, he's, and we can extend that, right? In yoga, philosophy, Gita extends it, oh, I'm a man and you're a woman, I'm black and you're white, and I'm a Hindu and you're a, these are all surface level. When we think like that, we don't understand. Deep level, we're all the same. Okay? All right, so let's move on. Let's skip number 11, in nothing particularly. It's just about the caste system. If you're interested in the origin of one of the sort of early references to the caste system, the Brahman becomes the four castes, right? The Kshatriya, he became the Brahmana, and they created the ruling power, and then he became. Anyway, just some reference. I don't know why that's there. It shouldn't really be there. I think it just got accidentally put in there. Here again, the caste system. Okay, I thought some of you might be interested. I think maybe that's what I was thinking. So, but I'm not going to read it. So here are the castes, though. The warrior in the previous verse. The Brahmanas are the ones that are the hand down knowledge of Brahman. Obviously, you can see the relationship between the name Brahmana and Brahman is the absolute truth, and Brahmana is a caste. So they are Brahmanas, castes, and then the Kshatriyas are the warrior, and the Brahman pay homage to the Kshatriya, and vice versa. So a lot of Indian epic is really about Kshatriyas, warriors, written by the Mahabharatas, or about warriors written by Brahmins. You don't learn much about Sudras, the merchant caste or the workforce. Sutras, that would be 95% of the population. So remember, literature is in the hands of the Brahmins, and I'm not going to start taking a Marxist position, but Marx would say obviously that the religion is invented by those who control the means of production. So I'm not going to go that far, certainly not. But certainly the epic tradition in India is written by Brahmins, and it features the warriors. So here's a little reference to some of that. The Sudras are the Vaishyas are the merchants. So if you're a Patel, that'd be merchant caste. Even the names today in India coming from one of these castes. So some of you will know, some of you from South Asia will know something about your family traditions. Of course, that's all broken down now. All right, so there's a reference there. Now, we're not interested in, this course is not about sociology, and those sorts of things, philosophy course. Now, if someone would depart from this world without perceiving his own world, what's your own world? Well, your own world is consciousness. You're a conscious being. Forget about the objects of consciousness, objects of the world out there. Fine, so we know the world out there in some sort of way. We see forms and shapes and qualities and substances and trees and flowers and houses. But what about the world inside? If someone were to depart from this world, the external world, without knowing your own internal world, it will be of no use to him. You wasted your life. This world is use, and even your own self is no use to you at the moment of death if you don't know it. You just get thrown back into the world again in reincarnation. So it'll be of no use to him as it remains unknown to him. We spend our lives trying to know the world out there, figure things out. We forget our own internal world. The Upanishads think that's foolish. The Upanishads urge us, seek your Atman, seek your Atman, seek your Atman, because that's the only thing that's actually you. That's the only thing that's going to survive. Remember the previous verse. Everything else we lose. So it remains unknown to him, just like a Veda that's not recited or a rite that is left undone. Right? What's the point if you learn all these Vedas? You spend 12 years as a young Brahmin boy learning the Vedic hymns so that you can recite them in the sacrifice, and you spend all that time and then you don't recite the sacrifice. What's the use? It's a waste of time. So that he's comparing that with living your life without knowing the Atman. Well, what about a rite? You do a rite, but you don't finish it. Then it's not going to work, is it? Well, what's the point? All that work you put into the rite is wasted if it's not finished. So if a man who does not know the Atman performs even a grand and holy big Vedic ritual, all the mantras and everything, these rites fade away. It is sure to fade away after his death. So this is a criticism of Vedic ritualism. The Upanishads don't reject Vedic ritualism. Ritualism means you put things in the fire to get material boons like rain and victory over your enemies and progeny. Upanishads don't reject it. They think it's sort of lower. They call it lower, the lower Brahman, because it deals with things of the world. You want this, you want that, you do this right, you do that right. What use is all that at the moment of death? You don't know your own self. So he says, if a man who does not know this, meaning the Atman, performs even a grand and holy big Vedic rite, it is sure to fade away. Whatever results you get from the rite, it fades away after death. It is his self, Atman alone, that a man should venerate, or a woman in this world. And if someone venerates his Atman alone as his world, that's because that's really all you are, all you own, all you can really have control over, if you will, and have access to. Everything else, we don't know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now. Right? We had the storm the other day. My neighbor lost his wall of his house. I told you. Did he have control over that? Did he anticipate that? Did anyone anticipate COVID? But if someone venerates himself alone as his world, that right of his will never fade away, meaning that, metaphorically the right, meaning that energy he puts into knowing the self through meditation, through study, that will never fade. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. And we're at the top, hadāraṇyaka, chapter 2, section 1, and verse 20. Where's verse 20? It should be right before the text. Let's have a look. There it is, 20. Okay, so he's cut out all of this, 1 to 20. And again, we're going to focus on Brahman as the cause. As a spider sends forth its thread. So here's the metaphor. Brahman is like a spider, and from the spider comes this beautiful, elaborate cobwebs, spun out of its own being. That's like a metaphor for Brahman. Okay? This world is like the beautiful, ornate spider web, and it's emanating from Brahman. So just as a spider sends forth its thread, and as tiny sparks spring forth from a fire throws out sparks, so indeed do all of the vital functions, prana, the life breaths. There are 5 life breaths in Hinduism, essentially, and accepted by most schools. 5 kinds of prana, life airs. So it's not just breath. There's a subtle body in Hindu physiology, and there are subtle airs, pranas, that circulate the body. And something potentially science could one day, if it's true, could uncover, because it's material. The Atman is not material, so it can never be, the Atman could never be perceived by microscopes or anything else. It can be inferred can infer that if you fail to find consciousness in any atom, in any neuron, in any subatomic, in anything, eventually, well, science has to look for it. That's its dharma. Its duty is to look for material causation. Can't start looking for theological causation. But at some point, science, if it's honest enough, could get to the point where, is this really, I'm trying to clean the camera. Science could get to the point says, well, there is no material entity that we have, that science can uncover that it's the cause of consciousness. Therefore, it must be something else. That's all science can say. And then they hand it over to the philosophers and theologians. Say, okay, it's yours. Take the ball. It's yours. We cannot do anything more. We cannot pinpoint the cause of consciousness. And we have finally come to a place where we recognize our inability to find a material cause for the source of consciousness. If they get to that point, then that's, Vedanta would say, yeah, eventually they have to get to that point. Because Vedanta would say, because it isn't material, so you never find it. But anyway, that won't happen in our lifetime, not in mine, maybe yours. So so pranas, however, are not. They are material. So potentially science might, I'm not saying, if there are pranas, these 5 subtle airs circulating the subtle body, even if there is a subtle body, there is something that is within the purview of science. At some point they might, like they infer the existence of black matter. They might infer that there are certain things in the body. Who knows? That's not for me. I'm not a scientist. So, but all I'm saying here is that prana is a material. The vital functions are not. Consciousness underpins the vital functions, the life airs, like the previous verse underpins thinking and seeing and hearing. But anyway, so the life airs spring. They're the most subtle thing. They spring out of Brahman. All the worlds, all the gods, all beings spring from this Atman. See here, Atman is used in the cosmic sense of Brahman. How do we know? Because all these cosmic things spring from it. So it's not talking about the individual. See, the word Upaniṣad means hidden name. One of its meanings. So the Upaniṣad, really, it's Upaniṣad is the real behind the real. Right? This world is real. But what's the real behind the real? What's sustaining the world? For the real consists of the vital functions, the prana, and the self is the real behind the vital functions. Consciousness is behind the life airs, my friends. Okay, that's basically the idea. And now we move along to the next. And what is the next? Well, it's 2.32 up here. 2nd chapter, 3rd section, verse 2. So you don't have to worry about the numbers. Just read everything here. So again, very esoteric, very cryptic. There are indeed 2 visible rupas of Brahman, 2 forms of Brahman. The one has a fixed shape, the other is without a fixed shape. The one is mortal, the other is immortal. One is stationary, the other is in motion. One is sat and the other is cham. This is just a fanciful, the word satyam in Sanskrit means truth. So they break it, again, this is not real, a linguist would, cham doesn't mean anything. Sat does by itself. So cham doesn't. So the author of this is just using this satyam, truth, and he's saying, well, there's 2 aspects of truth. The one we see, it's always moving and mortal, and then we don't see. And that's it's not moving. The one with a fixed shape consists of everything other than air. All right, well, let's not worry about that. That's esoteric. So they just to give you some sense of Brahman here, 2 visible appearances, kind of esoteric. And one thing the Upanishads often do is they give etymologies of words, which a linguist wouldn't accept. But the Upanishadic authors they don't care about linguistics. They care about teaching. And so they'll sometimes break words up in ways that a linguist might think is fanciful, but the reason they're doing that is to impart teachings. That's what they're about. They're not historical linguists. So this is a little example, that there's the world we see and there's something behind it. And even Brahman is visible. I mean, we are aware that we're conscious, and it's not visible in the eyeball sense. But we do know Brahman insofar by the very dint of the fact that we're conscious. We know that there's a part of us, the consciousness, that's different from all the other parts of us that we can see and feel. I can see my body, feel my body. right? And so forth. I can perceive my mind, I can change my mind, but consciousness itself can't grasp it in that sort of a way. So there's two aspects of reality. All right, don't worry too much about that verse, and we'll move on to the next. And here we have this nice story of Yajnavalkya, a great Upanishadic sage. And he says to his wife, Maitreyi, he's got two wives. And he's going to, in the high, in sort of a idealized Vedic periods of life. There are 4 periods of life for the Brahmins, especially. The caste of Brahmins are the caste of the teachers and the ritualists, corresponding to, say, our priests and professors, to be Brahmins. So at the end of life, their life is supposed to, ideally, doesn't mean everybody followed this, but in the ideal sort of Vedic social system, an idealized social structure, there were 4 periods of life. The first 25 years, you're a celibate student. You study if you're a Brahmin, you study your sacred texts. You belong in one of the 10 Brahmin families, and each family is sort of associated with a particular cluster and grouping of texts. And so that first 25 years celibate, I mean, you're students now, I don't know, probably not celibate, but you think about how much distraction being in college, how much of your mental world is caught up with dating and, sexual pressure and, checking out what's available out there in terms of partner, potential partner. I think of how much, texting, all of that, enormous amount of mental energy. And then if you date someone, or does he like me? Does he not like me? Does she interested? Is she not? Could I get someone better? Can I get you to hang on to this person? Or maybe you can get something better. The mind, it's just the mind. Don't it's just the way the mind is. Never going to be satisfied, whoever you end up with. That's why Indian marriages are, in the ancient days, are enacted by dharma, duty, not by just visuality. Because if you just take a fancy to someone's looks, well, what are you going to do when that gets stale? Everything gets stale, right? Think of the music you listen to. You could be crazy about music. You could be really into some form of music, and then after a few weeks, you can't stand it anymore. So if relationships are based just on the visual, that's not going to last, is it? Because your mind changes and the visual changes. People. So dharma. Or marriages were arranged according to compatibility and not just physicality. Anyway, so then the first stage is celibate student. Then the second stage of life, 25 to 50, you get married. A suitable wife or husband is chosen according to compatibility issues, compatibility criteria. Right? You want someone that you can survive with for 25 years. After the physical attraction wears off, then what? So 25 years, it's called grihastha. The first 25 celibate years are called brahmacharya. Remember that, well, we might run into it elsewhere. And then then from the age of 50 to 75, the husband and wife now, they've been married 25 years, they have the kids, grandkids are born, and all of this in the ideal social system. Then they become a yogi couple. They become celibate again, but they now they hand over the family, whatever it is, the business or the Brahmins, they hand over the family duties to the kids, and they start to retire, fix their minds, prepare for death, fix their minds on God, on the Atman, whatever it is that they seek, whatever their tradition is. And then finally they separate, because after all, death is going to make them separate anyway, going to rip them apart. So the very, very end, last 25 years, after the age of 75, then they really kiss each other goodbye or whatever, and they, good luck, and because you're going to die alone anyway. And then they spend the very last little period of life fully 100%, no distraction, because if you're with your wife, even if you're celibate, it's still distraction, right? Last period, fully focused. And, and many of the men went into the forest just so that they wouldn't be distracted. So here he is, Yajnavalkya, about to go to the forest. And it's called sannyas, that last stage, sannyasi. You take sannyas. If you take sannyas, you're a sannyasi. Here's his wife, Maitreyi. He's got two. And he says, look, I'm about to depart from this place. So Vedanta takes this as meaning he's going to take sannyasi. So come, let me make a settlement between you and Katyayani, is his co-wife. He said, look, I want to make sure you're comfortable, you're set up. I'm going to hand over everything to you. You won't have to worry. Okay? You won't have a husband, but you'll have complete protection because the children are there, and you can pursue, you'll have complete material peace of mind. You won't have to, I'm not just dumping you and walking up to the forest. Make sure you're all taken care of. Hey, let me make a settlement. Let me, divide my worldly goods between you and Katyayani. And now look, Maitreyi is a powerful yogi. How she seeks knowledge. She's a jnani. Let's get some words out. Jnana is knowledge. Jnana. My friends, write that down. Jnana. Jnana. That's knowledge of the self, not just some superficial knowledge. The person who has jnana is a jnani. Remember that, because we'll find that a lot. Like the yogi, person that does yoga is a yogi, and the females are yogini, jnanini. So she doesn't want some material security, but look at her. She's a powerful jnanini. So Maitreyi asked in reply, if I were to possess the entire, so he wants to give her some, material security. She says, if I were to possess the entire world filled with wealth, sir, would it make me immortal? She's also wise. She knows she's going to die and leave everything behind. She doesn't want to get some material things fobbed off on her. No, said Yajnavalkya, it will only permit you to live the life of a wealthy person. Through wealth, one cannot expect immortality. My friends, remember this teaching of Yajnavalkya. Many of you seeking success and prosperity. It's not going to give you immortality, is it? So there he replies honestly. And look at what she says. What is the point of getting me something that will not make me immortal? So she's a wise, powerful jnanini. Doesn't want some material thing. And then what? Hang on to it till you get old. Then what? Still cling to it at the moment of death. And then what? You ripped away. It's taken away from you. That's not smart from a Vedanta, from a Upanishadic point of view, a yoga point of view, a Vedanta point of view, a knowledge point of view, a jnana point of view. What's the point in getting me something that will not make me immortal, retorted Maitreyi. Tell me instead, sir, all that you know. Meaning, tell me about Brahman and Atman. And Yajnavalkya is very happy with this. He said in reply, you've always been very dear to me, and now you speak something very dear to me, because if whatever's dear to you in life, you tend to it's easy to make friends with people that recognize that and have the same thing as dear to them, right? So if you're, I don't know, if you like skiing, you make friends with people that like skiing. If you like football, you intensely, then probably you're going to make friends with people that like football intensely. So if you're seeking the Atman intensely, you're not going to be interested with people who are chasing after ephemeral, temporary ephemeral things. You're going to make friends with, your community is going to be those who seek the same thing. So he says, you speak something very dear to me. Come and sit down. And by the way, that also is Upaniṣad, can also mean upa, ni, shad. Upa, near, ni, down, shad, sit. Near, down, sit. Come sit down near me. So the Upaniṣad, Olivelle translates it in a couple of different ways. I prefer this, the way the Vedanta tradition, he also translates it as connection between, esoteric things, between things in this world and things of the other world. He likes to consider it, call it connection. I'm not going to quibble with that, but I'll go with the Vedantins, and they take the very word Upaniṣad to mean come and sit down. Upa is it's actually two prefixes. Upa is a prefix. You fix it before a verb. That's a prefix. Upa, ni, down. Shad is to sit. Come down, sit. Come and sit down. And here it is. Come and sit down. I will explain it to you. But while I'm explaining, try to concentrate, because this kind of knowledge is intense. So here he goes off, and it's repetitive. Remember that this is not written in a book. You're supposed to memorize it. So by repeating, you just change the teaching. The point remains the same, but the metaphor changes. And that way you walk away with the point deeply ingrained in the mind. So you'll find the Upanishads repetitive in that way. That's pedagogy. Imagine if you didn't have computers or books and you just had my lecture and you didn't remember it. That's what it would have been like. So something's repeated 10 times, but you just change the metaphor, but the point is the same. There's a good chance you're going to remember that. It's just once, you'll forget it. So one holds a husband dear, you see, not out of love for the husband, rather it's out of love for oneself that one holds a husband dear. When you go out looking for a husband or a wife or a partner, you're trying to give pleasure to the self. It's the self that we do all of these things, thinking, oh, this will make me happy. This will make the self happy. You think about it, really, it's what it really is, isn't it? I'm going to have children. Why? Because it's going to give me happiness. One holds a wife dear, here we see the repetition, and you'll get the point. The point is the last line. Often the first part of the line changes and the second half is the same. So one holds, the first was a husband. Now the same exact thing, but with the wife plugged in. One holds a wife dear, not out of love for the wife. And then this is the same bit. Rather, it is out of love for oneself that one holds a wife dear, and onwards. One holds children dear, not out of love for the children. Rather, it is out of love for oneself that one holds children dear. One holds wealth dear, and on and on. Okay, you read that for yourself. One holds priestly power dear, and so on. Okay, you get the point. So what is the point? It's the self that is the most dear thing to us. So why don't we just seek that then? Instead of seeking these other things, thinking they will give happiness to the self, they might. But then we lose them, and then what happens? The self is thrust into unhappiness. But you're going to lose your husband, your wife, your kids, your wealth. Either in life, often you lose something. You're going to have death in the family. Your fortune's going to have ups and downs. And even if you have the best possible karma, and you remain in a good relationship and good access to resources, you lose it at death. So one way or another, you're going to lose it. So he goes on, and then he concludes. You see, Maitreyi, it is one's Atman which one should be self, meaning Atman. Wherever it's self, it's Atman in Sanskrit, right? Sometimes he puts it in brackets, sometimes he doesn't. Which one should see and hear, and on which one should reflect and concentrate, right? We run around seeing things, hearing things, reflecting on things, concentrating on our goals. It's all useless from the point of view of deep truth, from the point of view of the sages. What is it that we should really be doing with our eyes, our ears, our minds, our concentration? We should be seeking the self. This is the teaching of the Upanishads. Okay, you clear now? The Upanishads are wisdom texts, imparting wisdom. What is wisdom? Seek the truth. Don't get caught up in the superficial, the ephemeral, the temporary, because you'll never be satisfied. And whatever you gain or you think we gain, we lose at death. But by seeing and hearing oneself, and by reflecting and concentrating on oneself, one gains the knowledge of the whole world. And again, when we get statements like that, it means the Atman somehow or other is connected to the whole Brahman. What that connection is going to be understood differently by different Vedanta traditions. Some are going to say the self is Brahman, no difference, like I keep saying, and I'll keep repeating. The drop of water, when it hits the ocean, it's exactly the same as the ocean. It merges into the ocean. And some will say it's all eternally distinct. And those that say it's distinct, for them, Brahman is a personal being, God with a capital G. We're not quite ready to develop that yet. We're just getting a sense of this Upanishads and their talk of God. Now we're on the third chapter, section 5, verse 1. Here it is. Let's see what it is. And sometimes there's a little bit of humor. You can see a little bit of humor in the Upanishads. I find a little humor here. I mean, it's just my reading. But other scholars find this also. A little bit of sarcasm, right? Then Kahola Koshitakeya, right, some Vedic sage, began to question this Yajnavalkya, the same Yajnavalkya we just ran into here with the two wives, Maitreyi and Katyayani. Okay, remember, we don't need to go back up, but here he is. Yajnavalkya. He's probably the most referred to sage in the Upanishads. Okay, so then he gets questioned. I don't know whether this is after he's taken sannyas and gone off, probably. Because this comes after he leaves Maitreyi, but I don't know. Then Kahola Koshitakeya began to question him, meaning Yajnavalkya. So he says, Yajnavalkya, he said, explain to me that Brahman that is plain and not cryptic. There's a little sarcasm there, right? Because the Upanishad say, oh, it's the real behind the real. It is that which, it is the thinking behind thinking, right? Because it's consciousness. It is the seeing behind sight. So this Gahola is a bit fed up with all this kind of cryptic language. He says, just explain to me that Brahman plain and not cryptic. Do you see a little bit of sarcasm there? Maybe not. Maybe that's, I'm just reading it that way. But there it is. Tell me about this. The self that is within all, he says. So then Yajnavalkya answers, the self within all is the self of yours. This is your Atman is the self within us. Which one is the self within all, Yajnavalkya? Gahola wants a straightforward talk. He doesn't want all this mystical, esoteric kind of response. He is the one who is beyond hunger and thirst, sorrow and delusion, right? So where is hunger? What afflicts hunger and thirst? The body. So someone who's beyond the body. Where does sorrow and delusion lie? In the mind. So then this one is beyond not just the body, but beyond the mind, beyond the thinking itself. It's beyond old age and death, meaning it's beyond that. So that means it doesn't die. It doesn't get old when the body gets old. It is when they come to know him, is when they come to know this self, not the body self or the mind self, that Brahmins give up the desire for sons. Once they know this self, then they don't have all these other desires anymore, and the normal mundane desires that are, typical desires for any human being. For example, the desire for children, sons and daughters, the desire for wealth, the desire for worlds here means, that rather than liberation, those who are ignorant of the self, when they die, they want to go to just a better realm. They don't want liberation from the cycle of birth and death altogether. They want to go to these celestial realms that we've been talking about, with the gods with a little g, where there's less suffering and very long lifespans. Now you may say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, the same thing. It's temporary. Even the gods they're never fully satisfied. They're always feeling something's missing, because no material thing can satisfy the innermost soul. So when the Brahmins know the real self, then they give up all these other desires. These are typical Vedic desires: children, wealth, desire for worlds, and they undertake the mendicant life. They go off, they renounce everything, they go to the forest. The desire for sons, after all, is the same as the desire for wealth. It's all just desire. They're thinking on these things will make me happy. And the desire for wealth is the same for the desire. Well, the worlds in the plural like this means the celestial realms. All right, get used to that. You may run into it elsewhere. Both are simply desires, external things that we think are going to make us happy, but they don't. I love this verse. I even memorized it, but I forgot. I have to you can memorize some of these verses if you like them. These are all, you can go online and find the Sanskrit. Here it is. Therefore, a Brahmin, the Brahmins, remember, that the fourth caste, the highest, so-called highest caste, and they're the ritualists and the intellectuals. They hand down the knowledge systems. Therefore, a Brahmin should stop being a pandit, meaning a learned person. Because after all, even learning, that's not going to get you liberation. Just learn, even it's learning about the Atman, just learning about it's not going to help. And that's where yoga is going to step in later on in the semester. You have to actually find a method. You just not know about it, but to actually experience it in its own nature. Experience pure consciousness. That's the goal, my friends. Not the goal of the traditions that know God, that accept God. For them, knowing the pure consciousness is a very good first step. But the theistic traditions, the traditions accept the supreme God, they want to go further and actually have a relationship with God, a higher Atman. But we're not ready to talk about that yet. Let's just keep with our own little Atman for now. And the Upanishads are teaching us about our Atman and about Brahman. We don't know whether Brahman is personal, impersonal at this point. Okay, so a Brahmin should stop being a pandit, like just being learned and accumulating knowledge like professors do. And try to live like a child, simple, pure, naive, honest. Now, but that's not the end. When he has stopped living like a child or a pandit, he becomes a sage, a wise person. And when he has stopped living like a sage, or the way he was before he became a sage, meaning a pandit or a child, he becomes a Brahmin in the sense he knows Brahman now, not just a Brahmin as name, as a caste, a member of a particular caste, but he becomes what a real Brahmin should be, one who knows Brahman. He remains just such a Brahman, no matter how he may live. All besides this is grief. And here we have an early reference to the idea that everything other than Atman is suffering, in the sense that it's unfulfilling. It's doesn't satisfy the deep level self. My friends, all these teachings, Buddhism, Jainism, are going to say, other than seeking the Atman or God, Ishvara, everything else you do will not satisfy you. Even if you get great grades, get fantastic GPA, get a great job, find a great partner, none of that can satisfy. And one way to test if that's true or not is look back on your own lives. Think about all the goals you had when you were in high school or middle school. And you thought, oh, when I get to high school, I'll be happy. And then high school, oh, when I get to college, I'll be happy. All of it, go back and think of all the big desires you had, and then ask yourself, did any of them actually make me happy when I attained them? Apply this to your own lives. If this is meaningful, it has to be real in your own practical lives. So these traditions, the Buddhism has four noble truths. The first one is exactly this last line. All is sarvam dukkam. Here, all besides this quest for the Atman, for the real truths of life, everything else, temporary, useless, cannot satisfy it. So so Yajnavalkya gives him even though he starts off, Kahola is a little bit sarcastic, it may be, the way I read it, but maybe I'm wrong, doesn't matter. But now he's satisfied. He's given him a real answer. And therefore, Kahola Koshi Takeya fell silent. And then we have these kinds of, again, the typical Upanishads, metaphoric, right? So now he's getting questioned by Gargi Vachaknavi. There's three women mentioned in the Upanishads. We had Maitreyi, powerful Jnanini. Remember, Jnana, knowledge, Jnani, the one who has knowledge. Feminine of Jnani is Jnanini. And then we had Maitreyi, then we had the co-wife. She doesn't really surface much. And then we have Gargi Vachaknavi. So how do you know it's feminine? Long I at the end, long A at the end. There may be other ways as well, but it's got what's a long I? It's got the line over it. What does it mean long? You double the length of the vowel. So without the line, it's E. With the line over it, it's E. Same here. No line. So this is Gargi. If there were no lines on the A and the I, it would be Gurgi. And this would be Vachaknavi. But it's Va, and this is short now. The second one is short. So it's Vachakna. These two A's are short. No line. So Vachaknavi. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of Sanskrit. There's only, no, these are called diacritics. These lines are diacritics. And why are they there? They're there to tell us that there are sounds in Sanskrit that we don't have in English. So they put the diacritic, which is a symbol, and they put the nearest thing we have, and then they put the diacritic on it. So the nearest thing we have to is Okay, so we put So it's more right, and then we put the line on it so that we know it's not . So anyway, she questions him. Yajnavalkya, she said, tell me, since this whole world is woven back and forth on water, remember in the beginning with water, what then is water woven back and forth? You want to say this world comes from water? Or what's water? On air, Gargi, what is air woven back and forth? On the worlds of these are different celestial realms. The worlds of the intermediate region, Gargi, and it goes on like this. And what's that then? What is that woven on? On the world of the Gandharvas. And what are the worlds of the Gandharvas woven on? The worlds of the sun. And what are they? Worlds of the sun woven on? Worlds of the moon. And it goes on, okay? You read that. And finally, you know where it's going to end up. The highest celestial realm, Prajapati. So it goes through various celestial realms of the gods with small g. Indra, we mentioned him. Bit of a character. And then finally we get Prajapati, the creator of all the realms. So what are his worlds woven back? On the worlds of Brahman Gargi. And now she's definitely She's a sharp lady. She goes, oh, and what then are the worlds of Brahman woven back and forth? That's like saying, well, God creates everything. Okay, well, what created God then? And obviously, any philosophy or science has to have a stop sign. You have to say, unless you want to say there's an infinite regress, that whatever causes X is caused by Y. Whatever causes Y, it's caused by Z. And you keep going, cause of a cause of a cause with no absolute cause, no cause of all causes. That everything, Buddhism would say something like that. Everything is infinitely, from beginning less time, there's no beginning of time. From beginning less time, before that Big Bang, scientists thought there was, the Greek philosophers, Aristotle, all thought time was beginningless. And scientists, before they inferred that there was a bang, right? Because they discovered that the universe is emanating out, right? It's evolving out, expanding. It's expanding. Well, if something expands, it must have come from an initial point. So that's when the Big Bang was proposed. I don't know what the date of that was, but probably sometime in the 20th century. But before that, scientists, Western intellectual scientists believed that the world might be, why would it have a beginning? Things would say was, the creatio ex nihilo began, God created it from nothing, right? In the beginning, there was nothing, and then God created 7 days. Anyway, so she says, well, what's Brahman woven back and forth? And he, what's he going to say? He gets a bit upset now. You see, Yajnavalkya he gets a bit upset. At this point, Yajnavalkya told her, don't ask too many questions, Gargi, or your head will shatter apart. It's interesting. We don't quite know what it means. We see this expression often, your head will shatter apart. And I think it usually is, there are expressions that, I grew up in the counterculture, 60s, late sort of, and we used to say, blow your mind, because people would take psychedelic drugs, and if you, took psychedelics, it would blow your mind. And then that just sort of seeped into normal vocabulary. And if something was cool, it'll blow your mind. We don't use it anymore, but, that term lingered around a bit. It dates you if you use it. Then, someone my age, 60, in the 60s, might still use it, but it's kind of dated probably from your point of view as if some of you that are in your 20s and so forth. But imagine someone in 1,000 years, digging up a book and reading, it blows your mind. How would they understand what that means? They wouldn't necessarily understand it was a counterculture, people were taking psychedelics, there was, they were rejecting social norms. They wouldn't necessarily understand all of that unless they, dug up lots of information, lots of text. But imagine it's just one text or a few old texts saying, blow your mind. You wouldn't really know what that meant. So we're not quite sure what it means, but from the context, it means something like when someone gets a bit frustrated, or when a question has reached its maximum, that you can go no further with the topic, then, but it does suggest a little bit of frustration from the part of the teacher, certainly here. Don't ask too many, but it's a common thing. So don't think he's just saying that against Gargi and being rude. It's a common phrase. Maybe it wasn't rude back then. That just like blowing your mind is not rude if you say that. So we don't quite know. We have to sort of try to guess from the context what its exact meaning is. So don't ask too many questions, Gargi, or your head will shatter apart. You're asking too many questions about a deity about whom one should not ask too many questions. Your Brahman is, is beyond the mind, beyond the intelligence. All we can know is that it exists. We can't impose our intellectual categories on it. Our intellects are governed by space and time and cause and effect. This is beyond all of that. We can just know, actually Vedanta is going to say, we can know that there is Brahman, but we know nothing about its nature unless it reveals itself, because the human intellect cannot go there. We'll get that in the very, very first verses of Vedanta after we finish the Upanishads. So don't ask too many questions. And she fell silent. How much time do we have? We have 15 minutes. So let's shoot down, make sure we got, where are we? 3:07. And we have the usual thing, right? You read all this, my friends. The self of yours who is present within, but different from the earth. Similar to what we read before. Whom the earth does not know, whose body is the earth, and who controls the earth from within. He's the inner control of the immortal. These kinds of verses. The body is the earth, and then flesh and blood, that's, matter. So it's different from the earth, and the earth doesn't know, matter doesn't know the Atman. body is the earth, but the Atman is controlling the earth from within. That's the self of yours. And then he goes on, the earth, the waters, the fire, same thing exactly. Just changes the metaphor. Self of yours who is present within, but is different from the fire. The fire does not know. His body is a fire who controls the fire from within. He is the inner controller, right? So, because the question is, Gautama, I do not know that string is and who that inner controller is. Who is the inner controller of everything is how it's all set up. And you can read all this. The question is set up. Again, Yajnavalkya answering a different student, Udalaka Aruni. So here we have a long A, Udal, short one, Udalaka. Sorry, too short, Udalaka. Anyway, let's not get into this. I only have 10 minutes left, 15 minutes left. Just a simple question. Who here? Tell me, Kapya, do you know the inner controller of this world and the next, as well as all beings, who controls them from within? That, my lord, I do not know, replied the student, right? Patanjala Kapya. And then you read this whole thing, and it's going to end up with, at Brahman, okay, or the Atman. And this goes on. So, so what have we got there? Again, what's everything woven on? Again, we have a powerful woman, Gargi, who was before, and her Vachak Navi. So she's a Brahmin woman. Vach means, speak. She's learned in words. Vacha is a word. Vachaka is a word. It's a Vachak Navi. So she said, distinguished Brahmin, she said, I'm going to ask this man 2 questions. Probably Yajnavalkya, but let's see again, Yajnavalkya, the sage. If he can give me the answers to them, none of you will be able to defeat him in a theological debate. So they had debates. And that obviously becomes later Hinduism, debates with the Buddhists, debates amongst the schools, a very important fundamental part of Indian intellectual traditions. They were not insulated, engaged in dialogue debate. Right here, and even in this early text, they were debating. Ask Gargi. She said, I rise to challenge you. There he is again, Yajnavalkya, with 2 questions. And she compares herself to a warrior. Much as a fierce warrior of Kashi, that's Varanasi. Some of you from India will know Varanasi, big famous holy town. Or Videha, that's in maybe Bihar or UP, can't remember. Much as a fierce warrior of Kashi or Videha, stringing his unstrung bow and taking 2 deadly arrows in hand, would rise to challenge a rival. So she's comparing herself. She's going to ask a theological question, philosophical question, comparing herself to a warrior. So she's aggressive, and she's demanding an answer. She's a powerful person. Give the answers to them. Ask Gargi, says Yajnavalkya. He's like, okay, ask. And here we say the typical Upanishadic, early Upanishads, right? Repetitive. You just change the first part of the line, and the question remains the same. You change the metaphor. So here it is: the things above the sky, the things below the earth, the things between the earth and the sky, as well as all those things people refer to as past, present, and future. So all the things we see in the heavens and the earth, and everything in the past and the future. On what she's saying, all reality. She just, essentially that's the question. On what Yajnavalkya are all these woven back and forth? So the metaphor of you weave a cloth out of, I guess, out of threads. What do you weave a cloth on? What are they woven on? And then he repeats the question. The things, remember, you're hearing this. We might find it a bit clumsy or repetitive, but keep in mind they're hearing this. Things above the sky, things below the earth, on space. And again, I find some sarcasm here. All honor to you, Yajnavalkya, you really cleared that up for me. Get ready for a second. I find that sarcastic. They're woven on space. And then she says the same question. What are they? The same question. And then the second time the answer is the sky. And she goes, thank you. On what then is space woven back and forth? And then and the reply is that Gargi is the imperishable, and Brahmans refer to it like this, right? Because everything else is perishable, but not Brahman, it's eternal. And how do Brahmans refer to it? Well, you can't necessarily say what it is, but you can say what it's not. And that's called na eti, na eti, na eti, na eti, na eti. We'll see that probably next week. Famous passages which has neti, neti, N-E-T-I, N-E, which is really not eti, not this, not this, not this. And here's an example of not this, not this. It's neither coarse nor fine. So not coarse, not fine. Neither short nor long, neither blood nor fat. And all of this. All right? It's none of the things we know. All right, and you read all this yourself because we're running out of time. It's not difficult. Now, I've explained it a little bit. This is the imperishable, right? Doesn't perish, the eternal. Another word for Brahman is imperishable. That's more like a quality. And read this. Without, and then back to 10. Here's verse 10. The little numbers are right before the verse. Without knowing this imperishable Gargi, even if a man were to make offerings, the old Vedic rituals, to offer sacrifice, to perform austerities in this world for many thousands of years, all this would come to naught. Pitiful is the man or woman, Gargi, who departs from this world without knowing the imperishable law. The Upanishad's the whole goal of life is to realize the self, my friends. Okay? This is the imperishable Gargi, which sees but can't be seen, which hears but can't be perceived. Besides this imperishable, right? So that this, now hopefully you're getting a bit of a sense of the Upanishads. I'm going to stop now. Same thing here. How many gods, Yajnavalkya, are there? 33. She goes, yes, of course, but really, again, sarcasm. How many gods are there? 6. Yes, of course, but really how many? 3. Yes, of course, but really 2. Really, 1.5. But really how many? 1. And then where are we going to end up with this? You go down, 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 down. And we're going to end up, what is that 1? It's Brahman. He's called Brahman. Who is the one God? He's called Brahman. Okay, so I'm going to stop now to honor the time commitments. Let's see what else we have here. I think this is all same sort of thing. I think you'll be fine reading this on your own. And I'll have, I think that's it. Yeah, we've covered what we wanted to cover. And here's the same passage of Yajnavalkya Maitreyi, just to show you that sometimes the same passage, right? He's going off to take sannyas. He wants to, you know, settle with the 2 wives, and she says, "Don't give me some, don't fob some material items on me. I want the truth." So that just to give you a sense, we've already read it, so it's the same passage. To give you a sense that sometimes entire passages are repeated. Okay, my friends, that's it for the Brihad. Read all of this. I may put something on the quiz that we didn't cover in class. Remember that I mentioned that in the first class. So make sure you do your wait a minute, we've got 7 more minutes. It's 1 hour. Why was I confused? Yes, we've got 7 more minutes. All right, let's read something more. We've got 1 hour. The class is 1 hour and 20 minutes. I thought it was 1 hour and 18. My eyes must be going. You're getting old. You can't see, even with the glasses on, you can't see. So what should we do? What should we read? Let's read this. It's like, okay. What else do we have down here? Here, remember the neti? About this self, one can only say not. Remember the passage we read? It's not fat, it's not coarse, it's not thin, it's not this and that. So, and the Sanskrit is neti, 2 words. Not iti repeated twice. So actually it's 4 words. But the word is repeated. Neti is mentioned twice, but the neti itself is 2 words in that, what seems to us to be 1 word. Words in Sanskrit often merge together. Not iti. Is ungraspable, can't be grasped. It's undecaying, not subject to decay. Nothing sticking to him, but he doesn't stick to anything. He's not bound. Look, by what means can one perceive the perceiver? How are you going to see? You can perceive material objects. And how do you perceive the perceiver, which is consciousness itself that underpins perception? So how do you perceive the perceiver? Well, yoga is going to give us methods. The Upanishad is not so much, it tells us about the Atman, it tells us to seek it, tries to urge us to seek it, tries to convince us that everything else is futile, it will not satisfy. But it doesn't give us clear method. Later, Vedanta will have its method of jnana. It's going to, Vedanta, especially one school of Vedanta, the non-dualists we'll talk about, the Advaita, right? Why do you get that word in your head now? Advaita, non-dual, Advaita. Well, I think we mentioned it in the first class, but we'll mention it again when we get there. They're going to say you can know it, experience it, but through knowledge itself. The other Vedanta school, Ramanuja, is going to accept that, but he's going to say, but that knowledge has to be accompanied with devotion to the Supreme Being. And the Supreme Being will reveal the truth. That's God. That's where we're heading with our course, Big G. Right now, I hope you're getting a sense that this Brahman, from which everything emerges, that somehow or other it's present also within each of us, without too much systematic exposition on the details, but the basic contours, that there is this absolute cause from which everything that's intelligent, that's different from everything, but from which everything emerges. Hopefully you're getting a sense of that, usually called Brahman, that it's present within in some sort of way, not clearly philosophized yet, or theorized yet. Somehow or other, it's present within us of the Atman. That's all we're getting so far of this very early Upanishad. All right, so we got 4 more minutes, but I'll let you go, and hope you have a great enjoy the sun and this beautiful fall weather, and hope you're enjoying this. I hope it's catching your attention. I hope you get to appreciate it as much as I do. All right, take care, everybody. I'll put up another recording on Thursday, and if any of you would like to sort of join in the classes, if I try to come up with a fixed time for recording, I won't be always able to keep to it, but I'm thinking of Tuesday, Thursday. And if any of you like the idea of, you're not bound, you won't be bound in any way, but you'd like the idea of whenever you can, of actually being, entering the meeting room and then maybe, being able to ask questions or engage the material yourselves, let me know. Drop me an email. Okay, Edwin Bryant, my name, @religion.rutgers.edu. Let me know. Say, yeah, you like the idea. Of course, I'm not going to expect you. I'm not going to, you won't be signing anything, or this is asynchronous. That's the dharma of the course. I've presented it as asynchronous, and I'll honor that, obviously. But it might be the case that, on occasion, some of you might like to actually be a part of the actual lecture, and maybe then engage with me more. If that's the case, let me know. If if just 1 or 2, then it doesn't make sense for me to do that. But if a whole bunch of you are interested, drop me an email. Okay. Take care of everybody. See you in the next. Well, have you in mind the next recording. Take care.